What's up, guys? Welcome to day 5 of becoming a music producer. I finally created my first beat. This is gonna be beat number 1 out of who knows how many. We're doing this on day 5, so when we make a beat on day 100, it better make this beat look like shit. You might notice I am in a new background. Over the past few weeks, I've actually moved in with my girlfriend, Sandra. So I'm also gonna get a booth back here to record in, but that'll be another video. For this video, I actually have a whole beat making 101 that I really wanna go through with you guys that I made for myself. Is it perfect? Absolutely not, but it's kind of a starter to everything that I'm doing. And so if you guys have any tips anywhere, please leave them down below. If you wanna be here for the journey, we're gonna be doing this for 100 days on YouTube. Hopefully gonna start streaming soon as well, because I think streaming and doing this would be cool. So what I have here is my first beat that I've ever made. I think I'm gonna run through the beat. If you guys don't wanna hear the first beat and you just wanna see like the beat making 101, you can skip to this time. I'm very proud of what I was able to do, and hopefully you guys vibe with me. So I'm literally just gonna play it right now. I think this is kind of like Mac Miller, I guess kind of like old school Mac Miller, not really like a singy, kind of like just like one of his early rapping days, but I really just see myself on this, which I think is a good thing. But again, everything you're gonna listen to, I chose sounds and made things on there. There's not really any loops on this, including the drums. You know, this is gonna be the first beat that I've ever made that you guys are gonna hear, so please enjoy. Thanks. Day 5, first beat. Let's roll. And that is beat number 1 that I made today on day 5. Went into this whole thing blind, right? Blind. Like, learned this stuff from Reddit, YouTube, from you guys commenting, from tips from friends. Like, I took all of that and I literally just tried my best. And I'm hoping again that I can see improvement. There should be improvement, but this is the baseline that we're working with, you know? I really think I could see Mac Miller on this. More importantly, I think I see myself, and I think I'm gonna attempt to spit on this unless like I make another beat that I think is better. But I'm just gonna go through like the setup, right? The setup now that got me to making this beat. And so I'm gonna switch you guys to literally my Google Doc that just shows the whole setup of this beat and kind of the algorithm I guess I'm following. When I started mixing and mastering my own stuff, I made an algorithm that I would follow. Now I don't really need to look at that much. I feel pretty comfortable doing that stuff. You know, I mixed and mastered, you know, my whole last album, and I feel really good. I feel like I'm in a good ballpark there. But obviously this, I'm looking back and forth. You know, I'm basically, every single time I make a beat, I have to read every single line, but that's how it is in the beginning. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna go through this. You guys can see just off the start, I have the setup. Change track view to custom. That's just the top part. You wanna change that to custom so you can customize it more, you can do more stuff in it. And I have things even here, press K to set tempo. Things, shortcuts, you know, shortcuts for me to remember. You select, this is something that you can use in Logic. So like all of Logic's options. Arturia, I didn't want to start with Arturia. I wanted to feel comfortable enough within the app of Logic before expanding to Arturia, because I do have that software. It comes with the MIDI, and that's pretty much what you're paying for, you know, when it comes to everything. It's expensive software, but I don't want to expand until I feel pretty good within Logic. So I chose this track girl. It's just like a track for like a drum kit, and these are the drums that I like, you know, that I use. You could use anything, but this is just what I enjoyed using. Next, we have our kick. So this is where I start. Even like I said, shortcuts, clicking DMD, which is just a way to get to your kicks, and then you start making your pattern. You know, I don't really have a pattern down here, but I do have something called expanding. You expand the track, you highlight, you press Q. You want to quantize everything because that kind of puts it within the beat, and it makes everything kind of sound on beat. And that's one of the most important parts about beat making, is you want to make sure everything sounds like they should be together. Snare, record over kicks, right? So you, on the same track, that's just my language of saying record on the same track, click in the track, quantize them to the 8th notes, right? And there's a closer, and again, these notes are very specific to me. So here I have literally that says, and you could write anything that makes sense to you. I have on the closer Q option, literally, because within Logic, there's an option for quantizing that's closer to where your mouse would be after doing the previous step. And so these are the things that I leave for myself, literally, so my eyes know where to look, right? When I'm looking back at my notes, and you know where my hand is. Again, all the stuff that I'm doing in the beginning. So eventually I get all the muscle memory down, and I don't really have to look as much. Hi-hats, a lot to unpack here. We control hi-hat 3, which is the hi-hat. This is just an option that you can use. I'm explaining this like you don't know what you're talking about. I know everyone probably understands this. Again, I'm a newbie. So the hi-hats that we have here is just the hi-hat option that I liked. You can add a pattern region and line it up. So that is just literally, you expand, you get a track into Logic that has every single thing filled. Like every single beat that would be possible is on that one track. And then let's say there are 8 beats here, right, on the track. I can take away the 7th beat, the 6th beat, the 5th beat of that hi-hat. I could take away then the 1st and the 2nd, and then I took away and customized how I want those drums to play. So when I press play, it's not going to play the first 2 spots. I have the things that stand out to me. Create a pattern, right, and add a delay to them. You just want to add a delay, I learned, to your hi-hats, so it sounds more natural. It doesn't sound robotic, because you know things tend to be when they're electronically made. I have click velocity on the bottom step sequencer to vary the sound. Start with 100. It just makes it sound better. Then I control plus click the hi-hats to convert to a MIDI region. Then we convert the track that we're working with into a MIDI track. Double click hi-hats, track, select tempo on top and set to 32. Again, it just depends the song, but that's just what I had for the song I was doing. Choose a section, shorten the note, hold down the plus option to release the mouse to drop. So this is kind of what I was talking about. I can take the hi-hats and I can move them around with my mouse. So I can have all the hi-hats there, and I can take a specific hi-hat within the entire song. I can shorten it, you know, like a clip to a video, and then I can move it anywhere on that track. Again, these are things that I didn't understand. Like a few days, like again, mixing makes sense to me, right? It's vocals. When it comes to the beat itself, it's completely lost, but we're getting there. Click A for automation, choose one note velocity. All right, so that is the whole hi-hat situation that I have. Again, a lot to unpack there, but that's what I'm dealing with right now. The next is more setup. Control plus click on combine tracks to separate, close, and add a new track and start adding melody. So that just separates the tracks out so they're not all combined on one track anymore, and you can edit each one of those sounds individually so they're not like on one track. Add melodies. That's all I have. Just add your melodies, right? Like, you know, come up with the stuff, and I did that. You know, I came up and I used different synths and strings that I thought worked together, and even maybe a little guitar in here and a choir. I used a choir that I thought sounded sick. You may have heard that in the background, but it's a female choir that I kind of messed with a little bit, and I thought it sounded cool. Then I worked on the bass. So I copied the track and chose a bass. So I just copied one of the tracks I made, and I lowered the bass on there. I also realized I could just be talking on the screen, so we're gonna do that for now too. Audio effects, distortion stereo, drive and tone, add emphasis to bass. It's just basically making the entire bass itself just sound with more. It has more triumph. You know, you kind of hear it a little bit more. It's, you know, it's there. You know, it's got more of a presence. It's what makes the car shake a little bit. Then decorate the track. You know, simple things like Space Designer could make things sound more wide. You know, it could make things more on your left and right, you know, more than just mainstream in the middle. Obviously, adding EQ. My favorite thing to do is when there's maybe too much of a highness on a note, is just kind of tapering that down so it doesn't allow it to play that note. And that could just make your whole track easier to listen to. You know, who wants to listen to some ear-piercing stuff? You know, it's never fun. And then the arrangement. This is one of the best things that I kind of learned. I start with, like, let's say a 5-note like count, right? All I have to do is highlight and then press Command and R, and I can have that whole track, you know, spread across. So you don't have to, like, you know, if you have a song that's 3 minutes, you don't have to play the drum 3 minutes straight. I didn't know that. That might be so obvious. It sounds obvious now, but I've always thought when making a beat, I had to play it right the whole time. That's not the case. You play it for a little bit, and then you can expand that. Obviously, you can add other things at different times, but you can expand that. And so it saves time. Everything sounds better because it's very hard to play everything right that long. So that's crazy. Even being able to mute specific parts of a track, you know, it's on the same track, but I can mute this part while this part is still like alive and not muted. Little things like that just make the flow better is what makes this much more enjoyable. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is literally it. That was my first beat. This was beat making 101 from somebody on day 5 of becoming a music producer. Again, I'm very proud of making this beat. I'm hoping that I can make this beat look bad by the time I'm done with this journey. But for now, this is what we got. And I got to say, I'm happy and proud of myself with this. Hopefully, you know, you guys had fun watching. If you guys learned something sick, I know I did. And hopefully you guys look forward to day 6 because I'm going to be shooting that very soon. But thank you again for vibing with me. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you when I see you. Peace.